on to Bobby. Thank you.
Trying to figure out where to be.
It's hard. Yeah, there you go. That's good. That's good.
Okay. All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. Bobby and I are going to chat with you today. I'm a little scared to know how large my face is on your screen, but hopefully there's some good filters making me look lovely over there, and you get Bobby in person, so that's even better. We're excited to be here today, and we're going to jump back and forth and hopefully not make you too seasick, but just give you a couple different perspectives on this, cracking this farm to school nut and figuring out how best to sell your products to schools. We're going to start with some introductions here. Make sure I can get to the next slide there. Bobby, you want to kick us off?
Sure. My name is Bobby Lane. I'm the farm school coordinator for the state of Wyoming through the Wyoming Department of Education. I've been at this since November of 23. And boy, has a lot happened. But anyway, we'll get into some more discussion about that. So that's me. Go ahead.
And Bobby's selling himself a little bit short. I think I know a lot about farm to school, but Bobby knows a lot about farm to school in Wyoming and has a lot of background in terms of some of the past work he's done that really plays into his expertise. So yeah, really excited to have him in your state. And I'm Andrea, and I work at a regional level. So I work with a group of 8 states trying to support farm to school. And a lot of what I do is support folks in Bobby's position at that state level to make sure they have everything they need to support producers and schools in their state. I've been in this role for almost 9 years. Prior to that, I worked for a school district buying local food, and prior to that was working on farm to school in the nonprofit sector. So I've been doing this work since about 2008 and just never get sick of it because it's quite the I mean, who can argue getting farm food to school kids is about as good as it gets. So, all right. So we are going to, gotta make sure today we're hoping that you really walk away with kind of a good understanding of what is farm to school, what are the many facets of it, how does a school nutrition professional kind of think about local food and buying food in general, and how local food might fit into their system or program. Really some tips and tricks for making local procurement work. We're going to have a pretty good section at the end running through some of the common challenges that we see, especially in a unique state like Wyoming, and how we might overcome those. So by way of introductions, I can't exactly tell how many folks are in the room, but Bobby, do you think we should go around or maybe just do some hand raising, seeing who we have in different kind of categories, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. It'd help me for sure. Anybody want to start out with who they are?
Grant with Cat's Farm, meat producer,
Okay.
here on Willwood.
The other half of that,
The other half.
Alex.
AJ Richard with FromTheFarm.org. We're a digital marketplace connecting consumers directly to producers.
Okay.
Scott Richards, Shawnee River Farm.
Yeah.
I'm Jen with Department of Ed, Child Nutrition.
I'm Jessica Long Williams. I'm with TEF and I'm the grants manager and the VISTA program supervisor.
I'm Angela McDaniel and I own a child care center in Grayville called the Early Learning Garden.
I'm Katie Swinsborn. I'm a journalist with Wildfile and writing service program.
Chris Dalen, I'm the food guy in Grayville, Bighorn 3.
Well, that's our audience here, Andrea.
Yeah, let's see. Michaela, would you mind chiming in from the airwaves here?
Hi, I'm Michaela Lovelace. I live in Warland, Wyoming, and I am a new director for Wild Roots Child Care Center.
Okay, how about we have a RW acronyms?
That's Rachel Weber.
Oh, okay, Rachel with WDE, okay.
Sorry, I was answering an email. Yes, Rachel with WDE. I was just listening in. Sorry.
Sorry to call you out there, Rachel. Thanks for being here. Okay, how about Val Murray?
Hi, Val Murray Powell, and I am with Murray Farms and a beef producer.
Thank you. And Noriko Tenhausen.
Hi, my name is Noriko Tenhausen. I'm working for GFO Gluten-Free Oats, the milk company in Powell. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone. Great. Well, it's great to hear so many producers on the call and in the room, and a couple of folks who are on the childcare purchasing side, on the school side with WDE. So good. We've got a good group here. This is awesome. All right, Bobby, you want to tell us what is Farm to School?
Okay, so what we've been trying to do is somebody mentioned the term communication, saying is by far the key, but what we're doing is introducing the food service directors to you guys, the local producers, and helping form those relationships, because we want to put your locally grown food into the school kitchens for them to serve to the kids. There's a lot of producers in the state that we didn't even realize was there, and the producers didn't realize that the schools are a huge market. You know, you put us all together, we are by far the largest restaurant chain in the state. And you start thinking about that, how many school districts there is. There's 48 school districts, 51 to 57 childcare centers. And you start putting all those numbers together, it's a lot. Now, not all 48 of those school districts participate. I think there's 45, 44, 45 that do. But the whole mission of our goal is connecting locally grown food to the school. And that means beef, vegetables, all kinds of produce, fruits, where we can get them. And that's the whole concept of that. At the same time, creating some educational materials back to the food service directors, pass on to the school teachers, to educate kids where our food comes from. There's so many kids in the state that don't know where the food comes from. And you know, you ask that question, they say grocery store or a can. And we want to change that concept. So Farm to School, we're working on a lot of different things, doing producer trainings like this, and as well as we're getting ready to fire off Harvest of the Month. Harvest of the Month would be a thing where we have a vegetable or a meat or a fruit monthly throughout the school year, where the kids can help understand how it's grown, how it's processed, how it's cooked, all those different types of things. But that's kind of in a nutshell what Farm to School is. And I touched on the educational part of it. That's just as important as the food part. So, okay. Is this mine, Andrea?
Yeah, well, I think you kind of touched it in your description there, but what we were trying to show here is that Farm to School is not just any one thing. It's kind of a combination of oftentimes a lot of different activities that come together so that kids are connected with their producers in their area. And so it could be kind of a combination of things like local food and taste tests, family and community events. And it's a bit of a choose your own adventure as opposed to any one program that you would sign up for. So, you know, hopefully some of the discussions we have today will help us realize, like, what does this look like for Powell? And again, it's not like you're signing up with me or Bobby to do it. You get to choose what this looks like for you. And we're going to bring that to life here by giving you a couple of examples. So, yeah, Bobby, do you want to describe a little bit what we're seeing here?
Kind of an example. Picture on the left That's in Mountain View, Wyoming. They're using local grains from Sarah Wood, who's here about, to make their bread and things like that. She's been an awesome producer and she ships to them. So things work really well in that respect. In the middle, this is Kelly Bean, donated pinto beans. A lot of those beans originated from Mount and Torrington and Graybull and the Basin area. So we got a lot of beans out. We're dividing them into smaller bags here just so some of the smaller schools didn't have to take a whole bag. They, when you have 5 pounds of beans, you have 10 pounds of cooked beans. So and then the next one, this is in Rawlins, where they're serving sweet corn and local beef on a hamburger. And, I can tell you, the kids were just super excited. When they come up and tell you, this is the best lunch I've ever had, this is a 10 out of 10, that makes your day for me. And so we pushed that all over the state. I travel from one corner to the other corner in the state, in every school district in between, promoting that. So yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like in a nutshell. I mean, Savannah here in Powell did an awesome job. She had potatoes, she had beef, she had all kinds of things that she was able to use this year. So that was really cool. As food service directors, I'm just going to say it right now, and they all came together as a team, and we won the National Mountain Plains Regional Hunt. We went from 1,900 meals served in 23 to 40,000 in 24. So we had a 2,000% increase in local food to schools this year alone. And, that's a huge win, huge win. I don't know, the USDA was probably kind of a little surprised, right, Andrea, that we so quickly and so fast. But that's how this ball is rolling right now. And I don't plan on giving the trophy back to the press. No time soon. They've held it for 3 years. I plan on keeping it forever. So,
Them's fighting words.
Yeah.
And while Bobby has so many great stories of farm to school exploding in Wyoming, I am going to bring in just a couple from around the region just to give you an idea of some of the flavor of what's going on out there. These are some pictures from Weld County in Colorado. It's one of the most agriculturally productive counties in the country. And their farm to school is all about high volumes of local food from their area farmers and ranchers. They do a process where they kind of map out all the local food they're going to buy for the year. And really that's the centerpiece, and everything from dry beans to beef to vegetables, fruits, you name it. Of course, in some of our tribal communities here on the Great Plains, buffalo has a huge significance, and past, present, and future. And so we're seeing a lot of resurgence of buffalo being served in school meals, by native and non-native schools, tribal and non-tribal schools alike. So, this is an exciting area as well. For the childcare folks in the room, I wanted to share a little story. This is down in actually Southwest Colorado. They had a farm do a CSA, or kind of a community supported agriculture box, like a fruit and veggie box for childcare centers, where they could opt in and they got a reduced price for it. And then they would be delivered a box of produce regularly to use not just in their meals, but also for education with the kids. So this is kind of we all know child care centers are a little different than schools, and this was one of the ways that they made this work. This is a picture actually from Livingston, Montana, where their program is a little more focused on high school engagement of young people growing food for the meal program. They have an aquaponics they're growing fish in conjunction with fruits and vegetables. And it's been a really great way to do that hands-on, STEM education along with food education. And they're actually selling some of the fish to local businesses and restaurants. So they're getting that experience too. So, you know, as you can kind of see here, every farm to school program is unique and kind of reflects whatever that community wants to get out of it. So, okay, so now I'm going to turn it back to you, Bobby, to ask the group, why might you want to sell to a school or a childcare center?
Yeah, so it comes down to what you may be able to grow. You know, it could be a variety of things, but the biggest thing that you got to be able to remember is the quantity. You know, depending on the enrollment at the school, quantity is that issue. Now, in lettuces, I'll give Chris here as an example because he's from Bighorn 3. He gets his lettuce from Greenville Valley Produce, but he also grows his own. So he's able to mix those if he wants to and serve that. So, you know, with greenhouses, you know, the food service directors can work with the multiple greenhouses to get the same product to make sure they have enough to serve. That's where it becomes an issue. But big, and I go back to this word, communication with them daily or weekly is of really vital importance because they got to know that they're going to have that. If they got it on their menu, they got to know they're going to have that served the next day because they're planning weeks in advance. So they got to make sure they have it. They don't like getting a phone call saying, sorry, we're not going to be able to come today, because then she's got to replan. So, but there's, you know, as far as what a producer can sell, there's beef, there's lamb, there's pork, all has to be through a USDA or state inspected facility. You know, anything that they can put on their salad bar, you know, because all schools have a 24/7 salad bar pretty much. So we've got lettuce, tomatoes, there's corn, there's onions, there's cucumbers, there's all, you know, little broccoli, there's all carrots, there's all kinds of things. So there's a multiple variety of things that a producer can grow. The trick is it can't be processed. If it's partially processed, it can't go. It has to go there in a raw form. The school processes it. That's on your vegetables and your produce side of things. So just keep that in mind. They can't accept it processed or even partially. And that means if you took a cucumber and cut it up and put it in a plastic bag, they couldn't take it.
Unless it comes from a licensed inspected facility. Because I know it sounds like Powell is interested in a co-op and you know, a food hub. And we are seeing some of these food hubs start to take on what Bobby's describing here. But as it stands, if you're a producer kind of working on your own and you don't have access to a licensed inspected facility, those cucumbers got to go in whole.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Next. So here at USDA, we just did a survey, and it was actually like in 2023. So it's already a little outdated here because Bobby has since come to town. But we did a little survey of all the schools in the country to see, what are you doing with farm to school? And there was great news out of Wyoming. Yes, so about 70% of all school districts, we use the term SFAs, it's roughly equivalent to school districts. 70% of them did at least one farm to school activity. They did at least, you know, maybe they had a school garden or they bought something local, that sort of thing. And so this is really exciting to see. And, you know, over 2/3 of them are serving local food, which is really exciting. And we're seeing a lot of growth in that already with Bobby on the scene, but we've got a really strong foundation here. And what the schools are seeing from this and what they appreciate, the top response was access to higher quality foods. And so when you're approaching a school and you're sort of making the pitch for them, buying your beef or buying your products, that quality is really what they're appreciating, that shelf life even, because when it's coming from that big box truck, it's just really not the level of quality that you all can provide. So that's definitely worth noting. Okay. This is a big slide, and we're going to break it down a little bit, but as the food service professionals in the room can tell you, there's a lot that goes into what ends up on a meal tray or on a plate. And there's so many things kind of swirling around in their head that when you approach them to say, hey, can you buy this local product? They're sort of fitting that in with all of these other kind of competing priorities. And we want to kind of walk you through these so that you can kind of put yourself in their head or in their shoes, and then thus sell your product and approach them with the most kind of understanding of what they're going through. So let's talk about a few of these. First of all, there's what we call the USDA meal pattern. So roughly, schools have to serve some different what we call meal components. They have to serve a fruit and a vegetable. They have to serve a protein. They have to serve a grain, and they have to serve milk, actually, as part of a meal. And students can kind of choose what they'd like, but as you're selling your product, you may want to note that what you're selling can kind of fit into some of these requirements. There are other requirements around sodium and, calories and that sort of thing. And I'll tell you, generally, local foods fit better into those requirements than do others, right? Because they're fresh and they're healthy and they're wholesome and they're what kids need. So this is definitely a selling point for you, but you need to know that food service professionals are kind of juggling these different requirements. They're making a lot of meals out there. Let me see here, next slide here. They're making a lot of school meals out there in Wyoming. We heard just how many lunches were served in your county, but can you guess how many school lunches were served in all of Wyoming last school year? Let's get a couple guesses.
Me guessing. Yes.
100,000.
How many?
100,000.
You're close. He said 100,000.
He's not super close because it was 6 million. Bobby was making you feel better. Right, like 6 million lunches served in just one school year. So like the magnitude, the scale of what these school nutrition professionals are dealing with is a lot, but also this is a pretty significant marketplace for you all. So as these school nutrition professionals are, pull it out there, as these school nutrition professionals are mapping out so many meals, such a high volume of products, they generally go through the following process when they are buying food. So first, they plan. They look at how much they served last year or last menu. They draft a solicitation, which is a fancy way, it could be a fancy way of kind of just writing up an email out to suppliers to get some price quotes. They send out what they're looking for, and then they determine who is going to provide them with what they're looking for at the best price. And then they keep eyes on what they then receive to make sure they get what they wanted. I mean, this is like a very basic flow of how someone would purchase. The only thing is schools, based on kind of how big their purchase is, they need to follow certain procurement rules. So you don't need to memorize these different processes. Maybe that's something that if there's a co-op that forms and you're sort of bidding on larger volumes of product, we could go into this in more detail. But what I want you to focus on is kind of the blue the blue portion here, which is to say that under $10,000 in purchases, or kind of maybe more purchases that are just in time, or for special products, the school can just go out and make the purchase. There's a term, they should be equitably distributing that, so they can't just go and make the purchase one place over and over again. They're supposed to kind of spread the wealth, so to speak. But under $10,000, there isn't much by way of specific rules they need to follow. Above that, they need to be getting some price quotes. And then above 25,000, they need to do a more formal bidding process. Again, Bobby and I can go into this in more detail with you if you ever needed to know. Jen, who's in the audience, is also an expert at this. But what you really need to know is that schools know this, and they're trying to fit local in while still following these rules. And it's totally possible, especially when getting started under that $10,000 threshold. Okay. What we want you to know too about the landscape of school meals is that roughly the costs faced by a school or childcare nutrition professional are roughly equal parts labor and food costs. So for any given meal, roughly 45% of the cost goes towards the actual folks who are preparing it, whereas another 45% go towards the food itself. And so when you're offering maybe a food that might be a higher price than what they're, maybe used to, we need to encourage them, or they'll be thinking in their mind how they would balance that out with maybe equipment or a new process that would save labor on their end, let's say, to be able to balance the whole kind of equation. So just know that these are the two major costs that they're facing every day. And again, with local food, they're going to have to balance it, whether it's a local food or not. So that's what's kind of going through their heads. A few more ideas here, and then we'll pause for some questions. So just as we say, you've seen one farm and you've seen one farm, the same is kind of true with a school kitchen. You've seen one kitchen, you've seen one kitchen. Every different model, every different kitchen has a different way of doing things. They may prepare meals fully on site. They may not really have the capacity to make meals, and they might be making little packages of meals and sending them around, like you see on the right-hand side of the picture here. They may have a central kitchen or a high school where they're making meals and sending it out to other schools. So as you approach a school, you want to kind of understand how they do business and how they do things, so that you can kind of, that'll inform how you approach them. And kind of this to take this a step further, even within a kitchen that's able to cook, they may have different equipment. They may have different refrigerated versus dry storage space. They may have different staffing levels and different staff skills. So all these come into play when they're thinking in their mind, should I order the local beef, or should I use the pre-cooked beef crumbles because I know I'm going to be short-staffed that day? So this is all part of their, again, their equation. Okay, on this slide, we were hoping to show you that while I'm sure some of you are smaller scale, some might be medium scale or bigger scale, sometimes there's a perception that you only need you only need to be able to work with a school if you can provide large volumes of product. And that's not always the case. So let's say for a child care center or a very small district, if they're serving a side dish of something, maybe a roasted vegetable, they may only need like 2 cases of that vegetable for one instance on a menu. Whereas if they're serving something on a salad bar, it's going to hugely vary based on maybe how popular that item is, and maybe if a group of kids is on a field trip, or if it's only in one little well of the salad bar versus maybe all four, 4 wells in a row. So there are so many things and factors that come into play. Don't assume that just because you have a small amount of product to offer, that it may not work with a school. Even a school district, I think Bobby has some examples of this. A school district may serve something in a local product in one school if there's only enough available for one school, and maybe kind of rotate around. Am I right, Bobby? Didn't someone mention that at the last meeting we were at?
That's very true. Yeah, it's, they may, like, we had some schools this year that took sweet corn, but they only got enough to do one school. Because of the labor side of it, processing it, they didn't have enough people. But in some situations, I mean, they may do, if they got 6, they may do 3. So it's just where they felt they could go with it, and it served its best, I guess. So, but yeah, that's very true. It changes in all directions. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so you don't have to assume, oh, there's no way I could provide, let's say, oats to a school because I can't provide enough for their whole district. Well, that food service director is thinking in their mind, how can I work these in? Maybe we can do one special menu day. Maybe we could do it on one school or what have you. So, and then oftentimes we think about this kind of direct relationship where a producer delivers directly to a school. But what we're seeing in a lot of the surveying we're doing and kind of on the ground is that it's a lot more complicated than that. Oftentimes we're seeing local products flowing through distributors, food hubs or cooperatives, even food manufacturers, grocery stores, retail. And so, sometimes we come into the farm to school space thinking, okay, we got to get our product directly from our farmer ranch to the school. Obviously, in the ranching case, it'll be through a processor, but there are a lot of other options out there that have pros and cons. And I know Bobby is working hard to fill in that middle space of the 2 in the farm to school, because in Wyoming, we know it's so vast, geographically speaking.
Our situation, you got school districts, got local retail agriculture producers, distributors and food hubs, we don't have. Our state, we got a couple of distributors, we got 1.5. We have some upcoming people that are trying to get into that realm, depending on grant dollars to get themselves there. But currently, the producers are going straight to the school. So that's where we're at in this game right now.
With the exception of Farm Table West, I would say.
Yeah.
Because he goes around and gets things from others.
That's right. There is a few producers that do that. Grapeville Valley Produce is a prime example of that. They distribute themselves, they grow it, and they distribute it themselves to multiple schools throughout the state. The sweet corn producers that way, there's multiple beef growers and processors that are doing that. But as far as distributors, them selling to a distributor or to a food hub for distribution, not much. Not in our state. Compared to Colorado and Montana and other states have multiples of those. So I just wanted to highlight on that, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. And I think, like Bobby said, what we're kind of seeing is some of the other states around the country, as their farm to school matures and they kind of outgrow these connections between individual farmers and individual schools, then we start to see this growth of distributors and aggregators getting in on it as well, which makes it more efficient for everyone. But Wyoming is, still still on its journey to that, that place. Okay. This next slide here is a little bit crazy, but the point that we wanted to make is that school nutrition directors and child care centers are always planning ahead. They are thinking about their menus, you know, for the next school year, for the next month, for the next 6-week menu cycle. They're always thinking farther down the road. The same is true with farmers and ranchers. I mean, you all are, I'm sure, considering what your next growing season, what your next, you know, season of production is going to look like. And so that's a good thing. Both of you all are planners. But oftentimes we see a lot of farm to school connections and communication, like Bobby said, happening in like September and October, which is kind of a busy time for everyone. School is just getting started. It's crazy. You know, everyone's trying to get a hold of the school year. It's the middle of production season. And so now is actually a great time. This like winter time is a great time to get to know your school district, to start to think about the following school year. Yes, there's a lot of examples of produce on this slide, but we all know that, you know, meat production has a seasonal cycle to it as well. And, you know, processing wait times and all of that, like planning out in advance is huge. So as you're approaching a school district or a child care center, thinking maybe like immediate ways to get started with small things, but thinking longer term or planning ahead is just totally speaking their language. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. We talked about kind of some of these things that are going on in a school or childcare nutrition program's head, so to speak, as they're approaching their menu. And one of the things that Bobby and Carla really pointed out is this other factor of like effort versus reward. You know, yes, they can make local work with any of these things here. They can totally do it. It just may take more effort. And so it's up to kind of you and us and everyone to, and you know, help them see the ways that it can be worth that effort. You know, that the reward for making local happen is worthwhile. And I mean, Bobby has a ton of stories of how we've already seen this in Wyoming, but that calculus is going to be going through, you know, their heads. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how to sell yourself, so to speak, to a child nutrition program. But yeah, any questions or Bobby, any other reflections, or what questions do you have about some of the things we just talked about?
Good.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
You had said that the food, like beef, needs to be inspected. You said USDA or state inspected, so it doesn't have to be a USDA inspected facility that we get the beef from, as long as it's just a state inspected facility.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the produce, does produce have to be inspected, or are we able just to go to local farms that we know in the area that are selling apples and get a bushel of apples and put that into our?
This is a tricky
program?
question.
Or
Andrea and I
like,
just were in the discussion.
how are we able to purchase from the local farms and also like grown on site? Like we're planning on putting in garden beds and stuff at the center where the kids will be actively participating in growing certain things, but then how does that play into being able to be used as a part of their credible meal
Okay.
for the food?
Anything you grow in your facility, you can use
Okay.
in your kitchen.
Okay.
I hate to get into the political side of this, but the question arose on one of our tours or conferences we had, as far as producers having to be inspected. And we have been going on the thought that no, as long as they practice good agriculture practices is what we've been preaching. The question was brought up, does the state need to inspect producers before their product goes to the schools? And the Department of Ag says, yes, they do. So any producers that I meet with now, I'm just saying, just for the grace and the peace, have the state inspector come by and look at your facility. And because you think about all the farmers that are going, or producers that are going to farmers markets
Right.
and selling their product, they're not inspected. And which brings up a whole can of worms. And Andrea and I sit in on this meeting and we had lots of questions about this. And I won't say that I agree or disagree, but just to save the hassle for a producer, call the Department of Ag, say, hey, can you guys come by and inspect my facility? And they said within 2 weeks they would come and inspect.
Can you tell us a little bit more about those inspectors? Where are they coming from? They're coming from Cheyenne?
Department of Ag,
So it's coming from Cheyenne?
I can't answer that. I don't know where they're coming from.
This has to be a new organization.
Have to be
It
what?
has to be a brand new thing. I've looked into this before. It's been 2 to 3 years, so this must be fairly new.
I gotta be correct on this. I'm politically correct on this. When I started, there was no inspection required. And that rule seems to has changed, is the best way I can say it. Do I want to create a chaos for the producers that serve our schools? Heck, no.
Just knowing where these are, you know, I just have not heard of these inspectors yet. So go ahead. You seem to have some.
I don't know if it's the same for produce as for beef, but our beef storage was inspected several times in our first year of operation.
And that's just the local food safety, right?
Yeah.
This is.
I mean, we always encourage GAP, you know, good agriculture practices. But the inspection thing was just handed, what was that, a couple of months ago, Andrea? That we were in
Yeah,
that
and it's
meeting?
very much a Wyoming Department of Ag thing. You know, there's certainly not an inspection requirement at the federal level, which Bobby and I made very clear to them. This is a Wyoming thing. And it's pretty unique to Wyoming. I don't know any other states that I work with that require this sort of inspection. So
Wyoming passed the food freedom law, so how does that reconcile with?
It doesn't. We
Okay.
can't take food.
I'm stepping in, sorry.
So my question though is if the Department of Ag is now requiring inspections, then a license has to be involved because it would be tied to a license.
We asked that, Jen, and Ms. Diver told us that she would highly recommend that all producers get inspected. And,
So, okay, just.
but we didn't get it on paper.
From the school side of things, schools have to be inspected twice a year as well. But in order to satisfy that inspection, all we do is email our local health inspector and say, hey, remember, we need you to come twice this year. If they do it or not, we've satisfied our side. So maybe that is how producers can also do this.
I'm hoping that it's an easy thing, but they told us they didn't inspect all the producers that go to the farmer's market. They haven't inspected anything. They recommend that they do the inspection. So I've tried to get some clarity on that, and I haven't got it.
Is there, and you may not even know the answer to this, because like we're on the child and adult procurement program, which is overseen by the USDA, not a part of the school district. So does that rule still apply to us as an independently privately owned center if it's not a federal requirement?
I'm considering it.
Yeah, the answer is yes, unfortunately. Yeah, because you're operating in the state of Wyoming and the state administers this program, even though it's USDA. I mean, I think what Bobby and I are hearing is, that this is a frustrating requirement, and I think that gives, Bobby some more feedback to maybe bring back to the Department of Ag, see if there's anything we could do to make an exception for, something like that, to be more in line with other states or clarify where this rule is coming from. Because I don't think we really got clarity on exactly why this is the case, right?
Doesn't sound like we have clarification of what it is we're doing at all, so there's no sense in even arguing or talking about it until there's more clarification.
So how the inspector views the laws and what they need, because they change them all the time. Our inspectors, Vicky's our inspector for slaughter and everything. And there's certain things I can do as long as I'm an extension of myself. So like you were telling me where as long as you grow it yourself,
Right.
you can serve it.
Right.
And like there's kind of different loopholes to the stuff that they allow you to, because I can, so right now we're also trying to open a restaurant in town. And so I can buy from farmers and process to be able to sell that cooked meat there up to a certain amount. There's a certain amount you can make before everything absolutely has to be inspected. But your facility would have to be inspected. That's what they always do. They do a quarterly, and they're always there anyways every Wednesday for us for when we kill. But they'll tell you, the ones that, like the inspectors that will come to you or whoever, they'll tell you that it's all how that inspector views it. But if somebody above them views that law or that rule differently, then it's by how that goes. So they're not always on the same page on how they do stuff. Each district has that. They change it. We've had different inspectors where they even know those themselves. So it's just sometimes they're paid.
Is Vicky the only one in the county right now?
For Park County, yeah, there's the restaurant inspector, is a different one, but not for Park County, I should say for Powell area. Because then there's another one for Clark or Cody area. They have different ones for different districts and all that.
So what Vicky does is completely different from what GAP inspectors do. And completely, I mean, she's just looking for general food safety, but GAP is looking at documentation. It's looking at all sorts of things that go very deep in the operation. It's usually so I understand, somebody you actually pay that comes from Idaho. Last time I looked into it, about 3 years ago, you had to actually pay them to come from Idaho to do your inspections. And they tell you what you had to do to get certified. And it's a 2 to 3 year project. Really? And then you still have to pay them every year to come out. You pay their travel and lodging. And you usually are able to do it with other producers and such and do it all at the same time.
GAP's not enforced, it's just recommended.
So now as I understand, it was moved into, it's no longer GAP, it's
through the state.
This is through the feds.
Through the feds, federal.
Well,
did you hear that, Andrea?
Yeah, so I think what Bobby's saying is that we recommend that schools generally work with producers who are growing safe food. Generally speaking. And then there is a GAP certification process whereby you pay an inspector, you get certified for specific products that you're following this mega checklist of food safety practices. And that's what this gentleman is describing. And that is not required. It is not required that you are GAP certified. It is recommended that you follow good, safe food growing practices. The certification and the inspection and the licensing that Bobby was describing is a Wyoming Department of Agriculture requirement that is separate from good agricultural practices. It's just an ag producer license is what I'm on with, which, well, that's what I had understood it, Bobby. And all this is to say, this is an area of extreme confusion and frustration that Bobby is working hard on, and that I apologize, we don't have like clear guidance for you, but hopefully will be resolved soon. And we all just care about getting good, safe food to kids. But we don't like when there is red tape in the way of that, so.
Go ahead.
I have a different question. How much of the cost from producers is a barrier, and are there grants to help offset those costs? So producers, they need to make their margins, and the schools may not be able to cover the costs that they need for that. Are there grants available to help offset those? So it doesn't necessarily come from the school, but helps them offset so you can aggregate more?
Currently, no grants available.
Okay.
We're hoping that one comes to life. So administration changes that froze some of those, even though we freeze the budget, we still haven't heard anything. Most of the time, the schools are, because of their reimbursement dollars, they have a certain amount of money to work with. And they have to make all that budget fit for all the products. The price point is important.
Yeah.
If it's above their price point, they'll go buy what they can afford.
Yep. And I have another question that you guys kind of touched on it as far as the aggregation. They need volumes and they need to be consistent when they've gotten it. So it's on time, on track, and not every producer can produce those volumes consistently. So it sounds like an aggregation support
Yes,
system.
and that's where
time it out.
the school can, as I said, if multiple producers are producing the same thing, they can buy in those micro purchases that we've seen earlier. They can buy from multiple and put it together to make enough. So yeah, and we see that a lot. Yep.
Yeah, great
Anything
questions.
I have no more in here.
Okay, yeah, great questions, great discussion. I will say we do have a USDA farm to school grant. It's not specifically for money for schools to purchase food, but it can buy things like equipment that could help them process local food, or a patty maker machine, or even some staff time to work on local food. Remember, it's this whole food cost, staffing cost, equipment balancing act. And so we do have those USDA farm to school grants, which schools or even producers can apply for. So get with Bobby or I, and we're happy to tell you more about those. The cycle for that is they won't be due till October of next school year, and happy to share more about those. But actually, the next topic we were going to talk about is food costs. So, oh, go ahead, Bobby, sorry.
Did we want to mention the LFS even though it's not to light yet, or what do you think?
I'm okay with you mentioning it.
You're talking about grant dollars for food. So they have USDA comes out with what they call a local foods grant. And it's an LFS, and there's the way it's set up is for schools or child care centers. And even part of the LFS goes to like food banks. We had one when I first started, in where I mentioned distributors. We only had one at that time. And trying to distribute was a nightmare for them in quantity. But the LFS pays 100% of that food for the school. So if the school looks up Granville Valley Produce and makes an order, then we get an invoice and we pay it. So that's kind of, the school doesn't have to take it out of their budget per se. We have another one in the works. We thought we'd have it by now, but it hasn't happened. We don't know if it's gonna happen. There's a lot of unanswered questions. You know, the administration changed, like I said, from it, but it's almost $1.1 million for local food. 880-something thousand for schools, and the rest is for childcare. So we're just waiting. We don't know. But that the purpose of that is it's that opportunity for producers to form those relationships with schools and get used to buying those products, right? And whether it's beef, produce, whatever it may be. And like, let's take the example, Chris, I'll call Chris and say, hey, order, I'm gonna sign a check. Get what you need, and we're gonna pay for it. And every school district in the state child care center gets to do that. But we're waiting.
Anything we can do to help influence that?
What's that?
Anything that we can do to help influence that decision?
We're just waiting on the federal government.
Oh, yeah, so nothing.
You would be more than welcome to educate your legislators about how important this could be.
Yeah, because, you know, we need to spread the word about farm to school.
Yeah.
And even our state legislators are still learning about what farm to school is. I had the opportunity to meet with one of our state senators, multiple state senators, and they actually reached back out and said, build us a pamphlet. We're gonna hand it out to everybody at the legislative session. We want them to know what farm to school is. Our US side needs to know that too. So I encourage everybody to reach out to the website. Because what we're doing is important. Yeah. For all of us. And it's not only for the kids' sake, it's an economic boost for you guys as well.
Well, and the nation as a whole. You have undernourished children, you have undernourished adults that then have.
So that's kind of letting the cat out of the bag a little bit, but I can't speak that we're going to have it because we don't know what's going to happen. We're hoping. We're really hoping a lot. Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we were about to kind of chat a little bit about kind of pricing because, like you mentioned, producers and schools need to find a mutually agreeable price point that works. And we all know that you all have, we all know that you have costs, lots of them, and schools, like Bobby said, have very fixed incomes, so to speak. And again, they're juggling that food, labor, equipment equation. But generally, kind of as the marketplace shows, when we reduce risk and we increase volume and get those economies of scale, that's when a lower price point works for everyone. And so we're going to talk about a couple of ways that this looks in the farm to school landscape. So again, increasing volumes. I don't have to tell anyone in this room that when you increase your production and you increase your sales volumes, there's cost savings there and you can offer a better price. Another side of this coin is that bigger buyers, bigger sellers are more important to buyers, I should say. When a school is acting like buying more from you, the vendors, actually treat them better and, want to get them their products. And so we see a lot in the farm to school space where someone might maybe just buy a little bit here or there. But what we really see, when we really see this flourish, is when schools and farms make partnerships to buy higher volumes of product because it works better all around. So I guess I'm curious on your end, how do you feel like the volumes of products that you're producing might match with what a school needs? Or what strategies do you think are out there to increase those volumes? I know we've talked about the food hub concept, but are there any others?
Go ahead.
I can just speak for what we're attempting. When producers have excess, they have to move, typically their offcuts, ground beef, roasts, and so forth. You're looking, this is kind of changing my perspective of how we might deploy what we're working on, but when there's larger volumes to move, but not enough to serve a restaurant, we can aggregate from multiple producers that have excess and combine bigger orders. And so now they get the volumes those restaurants need right from the producer, because we've helped aggregate and simplify that need. So the strategy we could employ where we're at is, instead of work focused on restaurants, just focused on schools, which would be much easier, but now we have an outlet for our producers to have a lunch they can clear out, make room for their next slaughter or whatever. I'm more involved in the meat space than produce, but
yeah,
that would be the strategy we could look at doing on our side.
Yeah, and remember, schools use mostly burger.
Yeah, exactly.
And they prefer a 90-10 blend usually. But that's their big use.
The perfect, that's the hardest thing to move for producers. It's some large things.
You may see them get a roast once in a while for, like, you know, a hot roast beef sandwich or something. But the other cuts.
Yeah, and I think the benefit of a school is that, unlike a restaurant, they often have what they call a cycle menu, where largely for their entrees, they're sort of mapping out a couple of key rotations over time. And so they could tell you how much ground beef they're going to need for the rest of the school year, roughly. And so, and this is kind of our next point, is sort of this ability to plan in advance really works with the volume piece, because if you're thinking ground beef, you don't have to just think about this like one instance. You know, you might be thinking about a couple instances per month for over the course of a couple of months, and then you're in kind of a whole different ball game for the type of systems you're creating, and you know, you're not having to call the restaurant all the time and be like, hey, are you going to buy this week? but ideally you can have an arrangement in advance where you've got this mapped out. Great point. I guess, sorry, to come back to this, does anyone else have ideas about how the volumes that you are, how the volumes you are growing or raising or processing could align with schools? Or
I've got a question though. Now, the school lunch programs, they have a contract with the food distributors, and they only have a certain amount of budget they can spend on local or outside of that.
Look, correct. And Andrea, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time it's an 80-20. But if they can readjust that. So let's say they set up with a local beef producer and they're going to get all their beef from him. They readjust that contract. Now, maybe it's a 70-30 or a 60-40. They can readjust that because they're still going to buy, you know, the things they need from companies like Cisco and other places like that. But now they've taken that budget and readjusted it. They're not buying ground box beef or USDA beef. They're buying directly local from the producer. So they can, but that 20% or 30%, whatever they may adjust that to be, is for their local purchase.
Okay. But when I was talking to a school district a few years ago, you talking about what I'd have to have a producer, a local producer for hamburger. Well, I get off the truck for $2.60 a pound. There's no way that I can pass that.
Right.
That's probably what we're into. And then
It is
they
big issue.
buy 80% off the truck anyway.
Yeah.
We don't have that much money to you know, so that's the problem right off the bat.
It is, yes, we're running into that a lot. Yeah.
But and I have no corrections to what Bobby said. That was perfectly accurate. So, but on your additional point here, about the pricing, we have kind of a crisis in this country whereby, yeah, folks think that that's the true cost of beef. And, you know, we all know that it's not. And there's almost a sales pitch or what have you that whereby these food service professionals, and many of them already know it, but they know that the value of that local beef or produce or whatever is worth it. You know, it's worth paying more for. And sometimes it takes a while of maybe trying it out and seeing the quality, seeing how that beef that comes off the truck, when you cook that down, you're getting all this other, you know, the product cooks down to less usable product in the end, and all of these different factors that, you know, counter that initial gut reaction of, I can't pay more than what I already pay. And Bobby and I are going to share kind of some ways to break the ice on that, but it's a huge issue. And I'm curious if any of the other school food service professionals in the room like want to talk about maybe how that challenge has played out for them.
I can tell you, I'm just going to speak just for a little bit, but some of the schools actually did a bucket test where they cooked that 70-30 and then they cooked 90-10 and they paid the same price per pound. Okay. And their waste in that 70-30 was way more. So they were actually paying more for that, right?
Right.
And getting those schools to see that, it's sometimes is a challenge because they're looking at the price per pound. You know, and they're cooking it. They don't realize how much waste they're throwing out. So then when they do, they're going, okay, maybe we can pay a little more for this better because we're already paying that anyway. If they count their loss. So.
Sounds like the education side, like you were saying, promoting it, because if they don't know that the big packers are cutting their ground beef with 30% lean, fine textured beef, which is just fat, that's pink.
Exactly.
And they add 30% of that to a pound of ground beef. Well,
yeah.
If they don't know that, they don't know the difference.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the educational part of it. And that's, I try to teach that. I can't make them make their decision. I can just recommend.
Yeah.
But they're seeing it. A lot of it.
I can definitely say that
And Chris is friend of food
aspect of it. And Jen can attest to this too, more schools in the big push. And it's gonna be, you know, I've been doing a lot, not in the school, but in the restaurants long enough to know you got about a 10-year window, right? Like Salted Caramel was the last one. Everybody remembers everything with that. Well, no, but it's from scratch cooking, right? The grants are going to, you know, I got a tilt skillet, $20-some thousand thing in my kitchen, right? It's gonna go back to scratch. I mean, I think if you ride that wave and implement it, and the training that they're putting forth for schools to more of us to like grow a garden, I'd love to do. I mean, I do as much as I can, right? Like, I think if we can get it right now and stay on it, I think that's just going to be the way it's going to be, right? You're going to use local, even if you have to get from 4 or 5 different ranches to supplement your ground beef, you know. And for me, I'm from a teeny district, right? But I invite my school board. Like, you guys come, you know, and our new super's a cool guy, and he's like, hey, I'll pay. He pays out of his pocket for like the staff to eat on the last day barbecue. And like, these guys come in, the school board comes in and we feed them. Well, that was like the first year. Now my school board comes in and serves at these barbecues. Big functions where local businesses, the guys I know, get together, and I'll produce everything. They'll pay for the product, and we'll have a community-wide barbecue, and the school board comes down, and it's all free to the public, and they serve. Like, that's where I've gotten like just crazy support from, you know, from your whole community. And then they know, that, hey, John's providing us, 600-800 pounds of ground beef this year, another 4 or 5 from the Barnetts. I mean, it just kind of, you work it that way. And I know it's tougher in a bigger school, because I'm fortunate that I'm from a smaller one, but that's been beneficial to me. And then when I go to them and they say, what the hell are you spending this money for? Like, you're, whatever, it's, lettuce from Cisco is X amount, and lettuce from, Grable Valley is X amount. Like, it's a lot more. And it's like, yeah, but it's still, his kids go to school here, and it's like, he's local. And then they're like, oh, okay. And plus, they eat your meals. I mean, I have a lot of staff, some of my best customers at the school, so that's been how I personally went. And I know the challenges are different for bigger schools and whatnot, right? Like I said, I'm on both ends of it. I'm like the guy that cooks it all and serves. And, I mean, like a lot of smaller schools, you do all, but I dig the idea that we're pushing a huge garden for the school. And I mean, so this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, just a comment, but if you really want to help the local economies out, you do local, because how many dollars turn over in that community from that? Where you buy it off the truck, where's it go? It's Billings, Rapid City, Salt Lake, wherever you see. And that's part of that education system, to educate more and people like that. You're supporting their local butcher shop out here. They're hiring local. They're paying local tax.
Exactly.
That's quite an education.
And that's one thing we encourage in our state is Wyoming grown.
Wyoming beef for Wyoming kids. Come on.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we're trying to, where a lot of schools deal with processors that are large meat processors that are doing 5,000 to 7,000 pounds of burger a day in this state. And we're trying to figure, I'm starting to get that data to recognize all the ranchers that don't know that they're serving schools. Because there's hundreds of them. And, they're the processors that have been working throughout the state, and there's lots of processors out there that are buying local cattle, but and selling that back to the schools, but they don't know who those ranchers are. And I want to make that to where they can put it on their menu that they're serving local beef from such and such rancher. He may be in Bighorn County or Fremont or Teton or Park or wherever he may be, but I want to start recognizing them, because that's one of the things we're doing. Local is local. Wyoming grown. That's what we're about. Holy smokes. I created a question on that one. Go ahead, Dan.
So I was gonna talk to pricing. I was a school food service director for 10 years. I came from Alaska, where it made sense because my food came on a tugboat or an airplane if it didn't come locally. And even Alaska local came on an airplane too, right? So it was very important to me there. My family has a farm in northern Montana, farm and ranch, so I get it, right? And I moved down to Cody, and actually right here is where it started. Scott and he had bumper crop of onions, as I recall it. And he called me and said, I need a home for these onions. Can you take them? And I said, sure. And he says, well, what do I gotta do to settle a school? And I said, at that time, I mean, we didn't know about this weird license thing or whatever, but at that time it was bring me $1 million liability policy and sign up the tax codes and I'll start buying food, right? And that's how it started, is he sold me his excess, just like you're talking about your excess ground beef and things like that. Because you need a home for it. It's gonna go bad if you don't have a home. And schools can generally take quite a bit off of your plate and give it a home. And as the years went on, I don't know, I probably bought from you for 7, 8 years.
Something like that.
He just put me on his wholesale list and I just did it, right? I was bound by all of those 10% things too, but I didn't care. Like, how are they gonna know how much money I'm spending? Are they really gonna come audit my books? No. So I joined every co-op I could be in, so I could buy from everybody's super value list, right? In a co-op, there's also buying co-ops for schools, and that's how they get with those big broadline distributors, okay? So I would buy from whoever had the best pricing, didn't care. They never cared. They were getting my money. Don't put this in your news article. Since all for and I was trying to recall, but I know I was spending there towards the end, probably at least 10% of my budget on local. So before you took over, I bought all of my ground beef. I left when you took over. I left. It's not because you took over. I bought all of my ground beef. I gave them my order monthly. I could look at my cycle menu. I knew how many pounds I needed. I would go pick it up weekly. I would pick up my meat weekly right from the plant of Hormonell. And they even, at one point, we were trying to figure out hot dogs. We gave that a hell of a run. They smoked hot dogs for me, and we tried them. It didn't work out, and that it was okay. It just didn't work out. So I think there are some school nutrition directors who are totally type A, and then there's people like Chris and I who are type B, and we're like, yeah, what the heck, we can do it. So bring it on. And finding those people that are like, yeah, what the heck, we can do it, bring it on, is how you get your foot in the door, because we generally tend to be the more, people are gravitated towards because we're a bit of rebel. Like, people like rebels. I don't know if you guys know this. But people gravitate to you and like, how are you making this work? And you just kind of lay it out and you go from there. So, besides my job, I also have my own business, and I get told no really a lot. And I just keep going, because that's really all you can do. And the price point is very serious. And the 70-30 beef, I don't know if you're gonna find anybody still buying that. Because we have pretty strict saturated fat standards. But you might find people buying 85-15 still, or 80-20. And showing them the value in the 90-10 there, definitely. But everybody that I worked with was really, really close to what I was buying it broadline for. And sure, maybe it was a nickel, 15 cents a pound more, but it wasn't drastic. It wasn't dollars. So I think everybody knew what they were investing in, and they either wrote it off as a loss, because we are nonprofits. School districts are nonprofits, not necessarily the private daycares, but you can write that loss off as a donation if you got a nice account, and they'll do it for you, right? So there's ways to work it that way too. I don't know. It is important. You can't come in dollars over. You're not going to win.
Right, I see a bunch of other hands.
I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, because like he's in a sweet spot being a small school district that doesn't need super large quantities when they're buying from local places. And so he's able to really work that a lot more, where like I've called Grapeville Valley Produce and I've tried to set up with them to do our produce, but they have a certain limit that they want ordered that's more of a restaurant type, and being a child care center and an individual one, right. I can't, if I order that much produce, it's all gonna be bad. Like it's a waste of money for me to try and do that locally through a place that has to now be inspected, and not being able to go to the farmer's market and get X amount of cucumbers or X that would work with the amount that we need, because we are smaller, that it's hard for us to do a lot of local, because we don't have the storage space to meet the quantity levels that's required to get stuff from the local farmers. Grateful.
So you're a little ways away, but somebody like Scott would fill your order in the heartbeat.
Right.
With Shoshone Farm. There's, you might even share.
We're gonna have a lot of produce here this summer and this fall.
Because he grows some too.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just finding that producer that's in your local region that can, you know, easily supply your demand. It isn't making it that you have to have this much before I even talk to you.
Right.
You know, they don't care if you're this much.
Right.
So, and I know there's some around that area that do that. I just-
Yeah, also is,
Well, that's trying to figure out is where do we go to figure out who we can work with
Yeah.
and who we can buy from.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I guess I have two questions now because of what you said. So the first one is, I'm intrigued by the CSA idea for childcares or small, I mean, that makes so much sense. Where, you know, you have a program, you know, and maybe that would be a solution. I'm just throwing that out there. I've only been part of a CSA as a residential consumer, not as, you know. And then my other question was in terms of the food hubs, and maybe you'll get into this later. I mean, are there models where it like splits produce, grains, meat, where, you know, only, you know, where you have a food hub that only does meat? Because it might be whole lot easier just to do one type of food or whatever.
Food hubs. You know, that was a big push of mine when I started, is that, God, I need a place for these producers to be able to go put their product and then be distributed, you know, right from there. And I had big hopes because there was grant money coming available for those type of things. Again, the Department of Ag was the administrator of the Regional Foods Infrastructure Grant. And then we
I
had,
read up on that. Forgot the other stuff.
and then we had the ERPA dollars grant that mysteriously, in my opinion, went to the Department of Family Services. And that was 3 million in RFI, 3 million, and then we can put them together and let's build a food hub somewhere. Well, my big wish didn't come true. Because that grant on the ERPA dollar side with the Department of Family Services went to a company called Food Works. And they're out of Chicago, I think. Then the RFSI grant that the Department of Ag decided to go, that they didn't want to have time to administer it, so they put it out for a contractor to administer, and nothing has happened on either one. And so when we talk about food hubs, it's generating that money or some entity that wants to build that and make it work. And unfortunately in Wyoming, we haven't found that person yet. Or that company to build that. So producers are finding themselves in the opportunities of getting some grant money like Farmers School to improve their facilities and be able to do their own distribution, their own storage. And that's where we're at right now.
yeah, and I mean, I will say though, there are examples around the country of food hubs really getting their footing because of school sales, or forming, you know, to solve this issue on the school and childcare side. Some of them failing, some of them succeeding. And so, like Bobby's saying, it's not that there's not a playbook for that, and a lot of resources around how it's been done. But it is just such a huge upfront investment that, you know, that's a huge deal.
I can tell you that a group of us, you know, Sensible Nutrition, Pantries, University of Wyoming, we've all got together and met with the Wyoming Business Council and talked about these things. And they don't move fast enough for me. But there is at least discussion going on about that. That's a start.
Yeah.
Right? So, yes, sir.
But as producers, we don't have time to do it all.
I
Our
know,
job is-
I know.
Okay.
You got a job to do
Yeah,
already.
and then if we are producing something, we know beforehand, plant it, raise it, whatever.
Exactly.
Okay, and to just jump in and out, just you gotta have somebody committed to buy our product, because we
Yeah.
can't sell, we're broke.
That's right.
I'm not gonna do it again.
I understand.
And it's kind of sad, we had an opportunity a few years ago to just bulk at a level. But the school in Manderson was up for sale, and it sold it just for $1. But you start putting temple to it, put that, you guys want to do a culinary school there so people could come in and put all this together. But you start looking at dollars to maintain that.
Oh, boy.
I mean,
It's crazy, right?
it was.
Yeah.
I mean, a great opportunity, you just couldn't pencil it out.
Yes, ma'am.
In the procurement process, you talked about a good chunk of that being sealed bids. And I'm curious if there's any data the school system can provide to producers so that we can understand if there's a way to modify our price point, right? Our production process to get to a price point where we could be competitive.
Jen, I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, you can ask a school district what they're paying. Most of them will tell you because they want you to get closer, beat it. There's no, I don't think there's that. I never followed it if there was. But the most important thing to know about procurement is it's happening right now for next school year. By the end of February, they'll be locked in with a bunch of what they're locked into. And that's kind of the USDA food side of things where people tend to, there's a thing called brown box, which is, there's 3 different ways they can use this money. They get so much money based on how many lunches they served the year before, okay? They get however many cents per lunch. And then they have this pot of money, and there's this whole list of commodity products that the schools can then say, we're interested in those products for this next upcoming year. And then that initial survey is out right now, right, Chris?
Do tomorrow.
Okay, yes, tomorrow. So that'll take the full list down to what we can manage because we have to buy truckloads of that to come to the state. And that is something that people can bid on to be that distributor too. So right now we have broadlines that are getting that contract. So these brown box items come to their warehouses and then they redistribute them to the schools. But I would say most people in that brown box stuff focus on proteins because proteins are expensive. So they're committing to beef in the next month. If you're trying to sell them beef, you need to get in there and say, hey, what are you paying for that beef? Because there's a value to that and they know what the case is. And then for every case on top of that, there's a delivery fee of like $2.50 or something. Five now? Okay. $5.
Well, we're gonna vote on it again. So.
Okay. Yeah, so anyway, they can give you what that value is and you can see where you're at. You can ask what they're paying their broadline distributor through their co-op and you can ask what the USDA does.
I'll also add to that, very rarely do we see folks jump in the farm to school world, like right into RFPs. And I don't know your experience working with a school, but there are like, I'm gonna actually go back to, this slide here. Like, we often see things go there, but the sealed bids are largely happening for milk, sometimes baked goods, and then like everything else. However, we're starting to see some school districts start thinking about doing bids specifically for local products or a bid specifically for beef. But a lot of school districts aren't quite there yet. And we see that happen after they kind of dabble in farm to school and they realize, oh, I can get like Jen was saying, I can get like nearly 10% of my goods from these local sources. I'm going to do a beef bid, or I'm going to do a bid for sweet corn, cucumbers, and tomatoes, or I'm going to do a root crop bid, or whatever whatever they want to do. I would just say at this point, most of them are not there yet. So are you saying that you might want to bid on like a full broadline distributor bid, or are you thinking for a particular product?
I'm just trying to think about if I'm planning my business, right? Our business model is we finish beef. We don't,
Okay.
we're not a cow calf operation. It gives us a
Okay.
little bit of flexibility depending on the way the cattle market. And so how can I think about what price point
Okay.
animal I'm purchasing, acquiring to finish if I don't know what price point I'm trying to get to? And since this is a
Yeah.
public school district, to me, it seems like the price points that the school districts are paying should be publicly available.
And yes,
Right.
that like Jen was saying, there is no reason why they couldn't or shouldn't be. I used to work for a school district and I would tell them all the prices we paid last year, even some other benchmarks like from, terminal markets and things like that to just sort of give them a idea. And that's in everyone's best interest.
And I think one thing that Wyoming could do for Wyoming producers to make it easier for us to engage in this process would be to aggregate that data for us and make it broadly available.
For check with their districts, because right now, this is from the USDA, this is the form that's due tomorrow, I'm not done with it, but you're coming in at 90-10. We're bidding for the USDA brown box, is coming in at $3.45 a pound for ground beef for 90-10. And again, that's lean, fine ground. And this list here, then we, like Jen was saying, then we all vote on this, and then this list will get narrowed to there's patties and all kinds of stuff in here, processed chicken, all of our brown box proteins. I mean, this is mainly what I go for. Fruit, canned fruit, that's, cheese. Yeah. That's pretty much it for, but that's the prices that she's given me in this survey that myself and the rest of our districts will be filling this out, and it'll narrow it even further. So that's essentially, I would say, with the price we're talking about being at is about $3.45 for 90-10. And there aren't even, I'm not even seeing even at 85-15 in here. I mean,
That's considerably lower than what the market was this year.
There's an 85-15. Yeah, they're talking 50-48 for 40 pounds, 410 rolls.
I just took a cow in to get butchered, had a hamburger made out of most of it. I could have got $1,800 for that cow auction barn. Okay. The processing cost me almost $900 on that cow. This is a big cow, old cow. But for me to come out, I'd almost have to have I got $6 a pound on that hamburger.
Right.
Or else it's just better for me to take the auction barn. Right. You see, and that's what we're up against.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, 100%, man. That's
if you finish beef, then
Yeah.
you want more than that. I mean,
Right.
you're not looking
Yeah.
Same problem with vegetables. Yeah, the cost of locally grown vegetables is so much easier, so much less expensive. Get them in large production facilities from California, or Mexico, or wherever else we get them. The comparison, we've already talked about the comparison, you can't compare them because the quality is so much better, they have better flavor, but my prices are so much more high that you guys can't make it work.
Yeah, but we do, like Jen said, we do. Like this is an initial to get you through, but I mean, and even a small 400 lunches a day, we're going through, like ground beef would be 70 pounds, right? Like, so, and that's one meal. Like this brown box will get me for a while, but I mean, even the last one I got, I think, and we're in February. So I'm going to be buying, honestly, and I should be doing it out of Hudson because I'm waiting for him to chime in when I say I'm going to be buying Cisco, Imperial or Packer brand, the Packers beef to get me through the rest of the school year. 3 months, left for about 2.5. So
Chris, isn't that price subject to change though? It can change.
it can, yeah. I'm just giving you the one that this is what all
their
the
forecast.
yeah, all the guys, gals in my position, that's what we're voting on right now. So
That's a
that's
drastic reduction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're down.
yes,
Right now, it's all Scott out.
but he may order that and the time he gets it may be double. That.
And I think we hear these same conversations in other states. I was just at a meat summit in Montana, and $5 a pound was really coming up as kind of the producer coming up on their, going down on their end, and the school coming up on their end, and meeting at that $5 a pound mark through various kind of massaging on both sides. And I don't know if that's comparable to, Bobby, what you've been hearing for folks paying here in Wyoming, but that $5 to $6 a pound is what we've seen work in schools. Because again, it's not the same product as a $3.45, unknown ground beef from USDA. I mean, that's USDA procuring millions and millions of pounds of ground beef. So of course they're going to get that volume discount.
Go ahead.
So my question is for you guys, because you already did this, you worked together and you did it. Would you share what your selling point was and what your purchase point was?
He was buying from Wyoming Legacy before,
Right.
so I'm not sure our experience. I was a visitor with him.
Okay.
And I wish I could remember what my price was, but I'm fairly certain it was under $3 a pound, but this was 4 years ago.
Yeah, when we got there, when I got there, they had that price at like $3.55 a pound. That's 2022, and a lot has changed.
Good. I can speak of what I seen happen this year. With beef prices. When the school started buying, when I started, they were in that $3.25, $3.50. The time they ended the school year, it was $5+. So that price, following the cow market, right? Cow, coals and bulls. The USDA, in my opinion, they forecast that production. We all know that our cattle numbers are dropping, are lower than we've ever been. And I don't, that price that USDA is predicting, there's no way that can stay that way. It's just not feasible. So, but right now, what I'm hearing from processors is that $5 price range, and sometimes a little higher than that, not much. But that's what I'm.
The only thing that makes me think is imported beef.
We don't, okay, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
So school districts are bound by something called Buy American, because it's federal dollars. So next year they can only spend up to 10% of their entire budget on imported anything. And Andrea showed you earlier that you have to have produce on every plate. Well, produce isn't really grown year round in quantities needed. So a lot of that money goes to, Mexico, right? That's where our produce production goes in the winter. So yeah, trust me, nobody's buying imported beef.
Well, is that for sure? Because the MCO laws, they label product USA once it's processed, and now you've skirted that.
Yeah.
You mean the stuff we send to China to get processed and it comes back to us?
No, I'm talking imports from Canada, Mexico.
Live beef
and
from
and then it's
Processed.
processed, and now they label the product USA. So that's what they're selling. That's what.
You had a question.
Anchor baby.
I mean, I'm not a producer
That's
at
not-
all. So I don't know this, but I guess one of the things I've done, I don't know. I guess what I would say is I'm thinking of this from a project management type point of view, where if you're starting from 0 and you're moving towards a goal of 10, you're not going to get there overnight to 10. But going from 0 to 0.5 or 0 to 1 or 0 to 2 is better than not doing any movement. And so when I'm looking at this, I know like the school district was, huge quantities. Ideally, you would be able to sell something to the district where it's like, every month you're gonna get that shipment or whatever and be able to produce it. But what if producers just decided to sell one thing to a school, not a district, per year, what would happen? You know, start really small instead of really big, you know, and scale up, because that's what makes sense, you know, but I don't know, you know, if that's even.
I answer that question in a way that you have to have that cooperation between the producer and the buyer. If I got a cow that I get butchered, you buy the hamburger off of that cow.
Yeah.
Then the cow dies. Okay, you heard that. You see, then you gotta have that food for those kids that day, so you got to go someplace else to get it. And so there's always that question mark in where if you've got a crop out there, you get hailed out or something happens, and there's always that in there that you gotta have a backup plan as well.
So, but what is, I mean, if that cow dies and you're not selling to a school, you're selling to some, you know, what, I guess, yeah, I'm clueless, so educate me, where are you selling it to? And what happens then when the cow dies? But you also lose the sale of that money either,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but in order for it to work, if I got a cow, I know you're gonna buy it when you get butchered. And so we try to work together. Okay, 1st of February, you need X number. Okay, so I'll go to Roger or whoever, to get it processed. And then you almost need to have a storage, or somebody needs to have a storage.
Well, you
in
need
there
the storage, yeah.
as well.
Right.
Sometimes the problem too, where the truck comes in every week, you pick up the truck, if you got to store it for a month or something. Then it would be just, a lot of things work out, but yeah, you get able to have it. But that commitment. With the understanding that things can happen.
Sure.
Yeah. I think that does come back to what Chris said as well, though, about how we heard the progression of, okay, at first the school board came and ate. Okay, then they're serving. Okay, now the whole community's in there eating. Okay, now when he gets this question of why are you paying this much, and they say, and he says, oh, it's these partnerships, it's what you've been eating, and then they say, oh yeah, okay, that's good. I think that speaks to what you were talking about starting small and building that basically that capacity for them to look at that $3.45 versus $5 or $6 a pound and say, yep, absolutely, that's worth it. That happens over time. It doesn't happen overnight. And Bobby and I were brainstorming kind of some ways to get started, like building that momentum, so to speak. I'm sorry, I cut someone else off who had a question as well.
Andrea, it was just Rebecca from the back. There's a couple things. So we, PEP has been looking at this for literally years, and we really have boiled it down to 3 action items. 1, you have to have a consistent market. We picked farm to school because there's 1,100 school lunches served in Park 1 alone. That doesn't include Park 6, which is about 700 or 800, and Matizzi, whatever they do. So we know that's a consistent market, right? Right now we have a ton of restaurants, none of them are using local beef for the most part. So we know that, I've called Jose a million times. Jose, remind me, how many pounds of ground beef can one cow take? You'd be like, well, about 200 or 300 pounds of ground beef. And then the rest needs to be served in restaurants or caterers, which we have a plethora of in our county, right? So that's the market. The second thing is the distribution piece. So that's where the food hub or the co-op or some version of that really comes into play, because the daycare, could call with a small order, or, we can get more restaurants involved in actually picking things if there's some sort of consistency. It wouldn't matter if your cow died because there would be another cow, behind it, so on and so forth. And then this is for the producers. It is extremely hard to get producers to sign up that they are using their direct consumer. When I moved to Wyoming, I was looking as an East Coaster. I'm like, sweet, there's all these farmers. How do I get the food? You're not listed anywhere. And it took a huge amount of time for me to build personal relationships with producers to get local meat, to get all of the things. Or to go to the farmer's market on the day that it happens to be, which is a huge pain in the butt. So, I mean, just like if you could list yourselves on the USDA list, So we've identified the USDA list because that's the easiest way. If you get yourselves on that list, it is free. It is 100% free. All you have to, it'll take a few minutes. List yourselves on that list. Then guess what? People like Jen or Chris or Savannah Leyland, who you'll see later today, at least they'll have a starting point of where, or, you know, the daycares of where they can get your products. You help, we need you to help yourselves. You just spend 10 minutes and list yourselves on that list. That is the biggest
You
thing
can
that you can
actually
do
call
today.
Miranda and she'll help you. She helps people do that.
Yeah,
And she has a goal of what, 30 by the end of your
50
54 men?
45.
Oh, 45. Okay, so help her meet her goal because she will help you.
yeah. The other thing that we hear a lot about is traceability, and Val Murray was on the call earlier. I'm not sure if she's still on the call. The Business Council has already worked this out. As far as beef, beef goes, there was a whole big program. They were sending beef to Taiwan, and all of those people at the 5 and 6-star restaurants could see exactly which farm that beef came to. That technology already exists here. I mean, a conversation with the Business Council, say, can we translate that over to the schools? And the kids see what farms they're getting their products to, and the technology is already there. So it sounds like traceability is a big thing to win over the community, and it's around. Has been for years.
But, back to my point, as a producer, we've only got so much time, we talk about where if I could let Abraham do all that, I can raise it beef. But I don't have time to do all the rest of it. It's easy for me to haul the oxen farm and done. You gotta have people committed to the program. And you gotta be able to make it about doing it, too. That's, to me, that's where the issue's at.
Yeah, if you have 10 minutes, take those 10 minutes and put yourself on that USDA list. If you have 10 minutes, just do that. We're aggregating that information and it will be put in a lot of different spots. But once we have a robust list, then guess what? That's a lot of ammo to go to our state legislator. That's a lot of ammo to go to our federal legislators and say, like, look, you need to start subsidizing food, which we've gone to them countless number of times and asked for these types of things. But until they see their constituents who are voting them in on that list, they're just like, we don't see the need. We think it's just you who wants this. So we need the list. We need people in mass saying, yes, this is important to us. We want to do this. And then on the other side of it is, having parents who are essentially, and children who are the product of the farm to school foods, or teachers, say, yes, this is really important to us. And we understand that that's also part of the pipeline, right? So that the community barbecue that you talked about is huge, right? And saying this is really important to the community, and they're going to be way more willing to pay a higher price, especially if you celebrate those local farmers. Those are all pieces of the puzzle. We're not asking you to do those pieces. Bobby's working super hard to make a lot of those pieces happen. Andrea's working super hard. We're trying to fill in locally what makes sense from transportation and so on and so forth. But if you have 10 minutes, put your farm on that list.
And let me add to that. UW has a specialty crop guide that represents every county in the state. And we're encouraging producers to enroll and be part of that. They just came out with a brand new publication just recently. So they won't do that again probably for a year or two. And we're trying to form those partnerships. The Business Council has a map of showing producers. I tried to blend in with that, but I can't advertise alcohol in the school.
Right.
And that's what theirs does. They cover every producer all the way through. So trying to partner with that when I've got schools and childcare, I can't advertise.
Yeah, the Wyoming table thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's where I'm getting at on my side. I'm just trying to address those producers.
Or Miranda, can you put alcohol producers on the USDA list? Is that an option? We can look into that because I'm not sure.
I haven't seen it like specified on there.
Some grow their own, make their own wine.
Sure.
Spirit, and I can't advocate that to the school side of things. So trying to work with them and getting that information so we can kind of have our own map in a way, but, you know, we're working with partnerships and trying to create more on in the same common goal and direction. So, it's a good point, yes. Okay. Anybody else? No? You had a question
I'll
earlier.
wait.
You go.
No, I'll wait.
You wait. Okay, Andrea, we're ready.
All right. Well, Bobby and I were kind of brainstorming like some easy entry points here. He had mentioned salad bars, that has kind of come up here. Salad bars are less thought out in advance than what Jen was describing as kind of that cycle menu. And so this is an area where you can kind of maybe sneak in with a bumper crop of something or do a special feature or what have you. But then, like we've been mentioning, ground beef is often an area where we see folks getting started as a special feature, like Chris had described, a special community event, that sort of thing, because schools know how to work with that, and then they can see that quality for themselves. Storage crops are nice because we all know that like a tomato is ripe for like 0.5 seconds, and there's a lot of challenges with getting that ripe tomato in front of a child at the right time. And the tomatoes we're competing with are grown for their longevity and are not grown for their exquisite flavor the way a local tomato might. They're also only ripe, only available in Wyoming for a couple weeks or what have you. So storage crops have some advantages there. They do require more preparation, but there's a lot more wiggle room in terms of how long you can use them in terms of their shelf life, but also how long they're available with what we know about the Wyoming growing season. Bobby, do you want to talk about like Wyoming local food day and the crunch and everything?
Yep, I can do that. So after I got going, I knew we had to get our name out there every way we could. And one of it was with the USDA having the farm school month nationwide. I thought, well, I'm just going to tag along with that. I'm going to have Wyoming Farm School Day for the month of October. And I wanted to take it all the way, so the governor agreed to do a proclamation to dedicate October 2nd as Wyoming Farmers School Day. Well, just to add on to that, it happens to be the Mountain Plains Crunch Off competition. I'm really putting some flavor in my playbook here because the Mountain Plains Crunch Off consists of, is it 8 states? 8 states?
8 states, yeah.
8 states. And that's where we count all meals served with local. And that's how we and but we had our farm to school day. We had local products going into school the whole month of October. And the whole plan was just keep that thing alive and have it for every month that we could. Wintertime makes it a more challenge because Scott's farm, he's not producing a whole lot. A lot of farms, unless they're heated, they don't produce wintertime, so it makes it more of a challenge. But yeah, so that's how we got to where we are today. So next slide.
All right, so we wanted to think through also kind of some tips for reaching out to a school, and like we've been saying over and over again, it's less of a relationship where it's just all about that price point. It's about the price point, but it's more. And these are kind of some tips for reaching out to a school or a child care center in a way that kind of demonstrates that what you have to offer is worth more than what comes off the USDA truck. Not only are you having a first impression with them, but you're kind of like treating it as a relationship, so to speak. And I'm curious if Chris or Jen is willing to share maybe how your relationship with a local supplier is different from your other suppliers.
It takes a lot more work, so you have to find somebody willing to do that, like Great Wolf Valley Produce has been brought up a bunch. They deliver stuff in totes, you gotta save the totes. Scott would have me save flats, or if I was getting berries or something, he would want me to save the clamshells and things like that. So on the produce side, it is a lot more work. But in return of all that work, they usually have really great images that I could steal and put on the Facebook page and advertise that we were doing this local stuff and celebrate that. And I will tell you, at my time in Park 6, when I wrote a Facebook post that was talking about local foods, it was the most engaging post they would get. So I think that adds value, and just growing up an egg, I was willing to do the extra work. And it is extra work because we're now asking them to process whole carrots down or squash or whatever, you know, and we could get it in a bag already pureed for us, right? So it's a lot more work. And when you were talking about entry points, if any of you are produce folks, the fruit and vegetable program is available for elementary schools. They can opt into it. And that's kind of like a sample tasting snack thing that they do during the day. And that's actually where my entry point in this state was, beyond the bumper crop onions, is that program, because I could take a whole lot of variety. I get extra money. I can use labor in that grant to process that food down. So that helps. Also, yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. And relationships matter too, because when COVID hit and we were looking for cold storage, there's no cold storage in our county. And it was like, what are we going to do? So we called Wyoming Legacy Meats and we said, hey, you got a reefer truck just sitting in the back we could borrow? And they said, yep. So we would create produce boxes in our kitchen, using as much local as we could, bringing in broadline stuff, and then we would take those produce boxes up to the plant, use our food truck, their food truck. It was a little bit wonky, but we made it. I only dropped one thing ever. It was a mess, but it was just one time. So we were able to do that. So those relationships matter when things go wonky, is when you really find the benefit of your local relationships.
Yeah, I was gonna say fresh fruits and veggies would be, because that's pretty still wide open. I mean, it's getting more dialed in as it goes, but that's a great opportunity, you know. And field trips too, you know, like it said up there, kids going out and seeing the places and seeing, we have a couple of cool greenhouses. I mean, and I know they've been out to Great Wolf Valley, but we have some as a district. Especially the younger kids really dig that, you know, and the older kids, as they get into the Aggie side of stuff, you know, build fences and weld gates, and I mean, that kind of takes on a life of its own. And that's, you know, really what we're here, where I'm at, is that we don't have the FFA or the Aggie, so that's, I'm trying to fill the void and bring that up to where the kids, you know, the buy-in is there, and when they go, you know, out to make purchases on their own, then they're gonna be like, hey, I don't, you know, these guys, you know, I mean, it culminates, and it's gotta start somewhere. I like to go small, you know, I mean, just do one thing, and we can showcase it. You know, I've seen where schools put the brands of the guys that donate, put, you know, 100 pounds of beef, whatever, put your brand up on a plaque in their cafeteria or something, you know. I mean, that's, we gotta start somewhere, so that's.
All right, speaking of that, Oops, sorry, did I cut someone off?
Mhm.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're
Speaking of that,
Okay.
Miranda, would you mind showing the video? Because what we're gonna see is a little story of a producer who got connected with a school. This is actually in Hardin, Montana, so not all that far from you all. And it just goes through how they got started slowly with one product, and they kind of got to know each other better and connected over time and grew both the school's usage and their own operation. So, and then, yeah, we will go to, let's see, we'll go to 2 minutes and 55, Miranda, so thanks.
I'm gonna turn this up really loud so you guys.
More and more, and so we looked at also taking the excess of our produce to the farmers market. It was just starting up here in Hardin, River Valley's farmers market, and so we started expanding there, and I think that's where we met Ellie, who was the food service food course person at that time, and she contacted us about doing harvest of the month, providing some kale. I think was the first thing that we provided to her. For the school system, and then from there it just started building the relationship. And so we built this high tunnel in 2016. This was the first one that we built because we had problems here. We're close to the Bighorn River, kind of a little bit lower in the valley, and so frost was kind of shortening our season. I remember one year our tomatoes got frosted out in August.
Really early, yeah.
And so and then we started hearing about high tunnels, and then through the NRCS, the high tunnel program that was available for cost share. And so that was interesting to us. And so we applied and were able to build this 30 by 72 high tunnel in 2016. And then with the schools, I guess we started providing more in 2017. Was that?
Yeah, I think we were doing more lettuce greens, and they liked kale.
They like kale and they like lettuce greens, and with the school, with the early season, we really saw the benefits of the high tunnel with season extension, to be able to grow produce in the quantities necessary to be able to maybe provide some to the schools. Obviously, we were just scaling up and trying to learn. And so the high tunnel, so we decided to apply for a second high tunnel in 2018, and we built the second one over to the north here. And so that we could dedicate one high tunnel to salad greens, and then also we'd have one high tunnel each year that would be in season-long crops like your tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers. And so we just flip-flop those each year with our crop rotation. And we like to say one's called salad and the other one's called salsa.
All right, so, oh, I'm probably really loud. Okay, turn me down.
You're good.
Okay, I'm good. Okay. So what did folks think? What were you hearing from their experience there, kind of getting started with the school and then building up to having this whole salad green, salad hoop house and the salsa hoop house?
Just getting started, start somewhere. One foot in front of the other and then see where it evolves. Kind of like you.
So that little video was part of a whole bunch of producer case studies and profiles that are on the Bringing the Farm to School producer toolkit website. And so some of the content that Bobby and I presented comes a little bit from that resource. So there's a lot of them on meat as well. So there's some different meat producers and processors, all sorts of different vegetables, just like different case studies of how folks, again, got started and then built their models. There's some on Food Hubs as well. So just wanted to show that. Let's see, Bobby, we were gonna have kind of some discussions around some of the challenges that we're facing in Wyoming, but we've had kind of a lot of these discussions already. So I'm curious, does the group want to hear kind of some more success models? Do you want to talk more about some of these challenges? What are you feeling for our next? I know we just have like a couple more minutes together.
Another question I have is how much goes out in the garbage at these school lunches?
I have no idea. The president could probably tell you.
Too much?
Yeah.
Too much. We waste, I mean, I can just tell you right off the bat, because like a graduated waste container is about, I don't know, 7 or 8 gallons of milk a day. Gets poured out, so. As far as the grade schools are the worst for us, you know, because the other kids, middle school and high school is, you know, as far as the main entree or the protein part of it, very little of that. It's the fruits and the vegetables. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? So, and then on my end, I mean, we have the luxury of, I mean, I've ran restaurants and stuff forever too, and it's like, we have the luxury of, you know, this is, you know, I'm essentially serving a banquet for 180 kids a day, right? Like I could dial that in, and so waste on my end, you know, we portion things right. We have a minimum that we have to serve. I go over that quite a bit, you know, for the older kids. I mean, it is just kind of how it happens. But yeah, there's on the protein, the beef aspect of it very little, because that's our costly, you know what I mean? Like we don't want to, we, you know, so that was tough. And what they do with it after it hits their tray, you know, they've done the state and everything done, you know, that you choose 3, so they don't, it isn't just 5 things they have to have, you know, we have to offer a certain amount and they could choose, one of them has to be that fruit or vegetable, and it's, you know, it's a reimbursable meal is, you know, the protocol we have to follow, the kid has to have on their plate for it to pass, you know. So
I think the bigger issue in waste is not anything any of us can solve on our own until you start knocking the heads of the school boards, is the amount of time they give kids to eat is very little.
Yeah.
Very, very little. So you've got these little babies who come out of her daycare who eat awesome, like really good. And they have a lot of time to eat their lunch, and they come into the school system, they go through the line, they get their little trays, they come sit down, and it's like, don't. And they're like, wait, what? We didn't have any time to eat. So that, I think, is the bigger food waste issue, is the amount of time kids get to eat.
And the reason I asked the question is food quality, because it's sad, a lot of stuff we made is really good quality. I got a story for you. I took my grandson to the organic feed conference in Washington. They had a wonderful buffet, they had a salad bar and everything. Man, I was eating that up. My grandson said, Grandpa, let's go find a Kentucky Fried. I can't handle this. I said, I'll just hang tough, you'll be all right. Second or third day there, he said, I'm starting to like these. He's going down to 7 thirds because they have the quality. You know, if you pay for the quality, that's what I'm into. Local stuff is going to be higher. Okay, and so why can't you justify buying local? Because they're going to eat it and throw it in the garbage.
Well, 100%. And that, I mean, like you were talking too, it's a puzzle. It's a piece, right? Like taking kids on a field trip and seeing where it's grown, seeing that it is grown, eating a tomato off the vine, pulling a basket and dusting it off and eating it. Like most of them, what the hell is a rat? You know what I mean? Like the fresh fruit and vegetables program, exposing kids to, you know, bok choy. I mean, I wouldn't be choy. I mean, we're serving, I think tomorrow we're serving our fresh fruit and veggie thing, right? Like, I think we're headed in the right direction. Things like what's going on right here today, you know, is moving us in the right direction. It isn't going to happen overnight, but it sure as hell wouldn't do anything if we don't do something, you know. I mean, and so, you know, producers, and I get it, you know, the beef thing, and I understand the business aspect of it too. And I think the more immersed our kids are, right? You always say, at least I say it, I coach a lot of sports and everything. It's like, I'd like to slap the parents, not the kid. Well, no, I mean, for real, and I'm one of those parents, I have children, I'm raising the same damn kids that are whatever, you know, that I do made the same mistakes, but, you know, now, seeing those, I can do that, and I'm in a position to decide. So I think, you know, what we're doing here, and I mean, just coming here is one thing, but, you know, I'm a doer kind of guy too, so like, let's go out and do it, and I'm gonna do everything I can to, you know, to help the kids, to buy local, to do whatever I can for it, as long as I'm in a position to do so.
Another thing I'd like to discuss a little bit. I've got plenty of land, but I can't cover it all. So if somebody want to come out and do something like that, I'll provide the land and the water and equipment. It's an educational, like bring the kids out to pick melons or something like that, pick pumpkins, whatever. I mean, that somebody's gonna have to grow them. I don't have time to.
Well, I partnered with the USDA, a gal in Grable, and we actually did a community farm, and part of that community barbecue, we had, I don't know how many thousands of pounds, like, for the crunch off, I grew the watermelon. For the crunch off, I grew the tomatoes. I think I grew like something for the salsa, for the salad bar. We had all that corn. I mean, I have things on the menu that day for locally grown, but part of that community barbecue, and we were, Grable was small, and 1,700 people, and we think about 550 people come to that. And we had all these bags of, you know, produce, all kinds of mixed bags we put together and stored in the fridge and just gave them out to people that came. And this is part of our community garden. You can have a plot where, I mean, that's what I build in the summer. I was building farm ground, you know, for people to come out and to be able to plant their own. And we do have water, we do have equipment to work your thing. And, you know, we involve the special needs kids, the younger kids. I mean, it's just, I'm very fortunate, in a very fortunate district that we have this opportunity, but it does take the work. But we're getting there, you know, it isn't. So that's awesome. I mean, I would say, in your local here in Powell.
What?
Are you local here in Powell?
I'm in Otto.
In Otto? Okay, well then there you go. I mean, that's, you know, you definitely get it. I mean, I'd get a hold of the director in Burlington and say, hey, let's, you know, actually Cohen probably, USDA in Grable. Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, I mean.
And Annette Moss is the director for Annette Moss is the director for your district.
I don't know, I guess I just got frustrated because I've been promoting this for years.
Yeah.
But I haven't got any.
She's brand new this year.
You know, a lot of the, like I said, I went in that one day, I get hamburger off the truck for this, or whatever. I just couldn't get anybody to work with me. Because I just, come on, let's get this going.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. So I'm getting old and frustrated.
Right.
I need somebody to come and take over, help out.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I'd love to have somebody out doing stuff like that.
So a lot of schools, like you said,
Back to the quality.
Yeah.
That quality for those kids, so they'll eat it.
Right. And a lot of schools have, like he was talking about, either an egg program or culinary arts. They're called CTE classes, career technical ed. And sometimes those teachers are just looking for some project to stick those kids on. So I think it is worth approaching your school district, especially if you do want to, you know, you already got the irrigation going out there. You might as well see if anybody's interested. Yeah.
So I just had a question for the food service directors, you know, like, we talked a lot about the barriers of producers, but on your end, you know, are there things that you've seen that you think would help schools kind of develop these programs? Is it a labor cost thing? Is it a manpower thing? Is it an idea thing? Is it a space thing?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I just.
You hit them all.
Well, okay, I'll let, how much?
No, I just honestly believe, you know, it's a drive thing. It's a personnel, 100%, because like, there's people excited about the community garden and the school garden, and the school board just bought a piece of property right next to my cafeteria, and already have fence up and we're gonna go greenhouse, like, you know, I mean, it's just where, you know, when I'm pushing it, and we don't even have an FFA person, we don't have an ag teacher, haven't it for a year. We got somebody that wants fresh stuff in his cafeteria, and the school board's on board, and we're rolling, you know, and I'm gonna keep going. But again, it's trying to build that culture to where if I'm not there, then, you know, I mean, you got own businesses and you know how it is, your culture's where it's at. That's where I think it has to start. Because school boards are gonna come and go, direct, you know, I mean, they
It
are.
starts with the schools.
Yeah, it really is the culture of your school where you're at to back it. So,
Yeah, right,
because
you nailed that.
It starts, it goes all the way from food service director, business manager, school board. And you gotta, if you got your food service director, that's all about doing it, but if your business manager's not, and then you're up against that, or your school board, or your principal, superintendent. So
But
I
something,
encourage parents to talk to their school boards. That they want to see more local into their schools for their kids to eat. But if parents don't get involved, you know, it helps. So, I mean, I've seen that take place in drastic changes. Different.
Well, and I think for a big chunk of Wyoming, something that's gonna be a big hindrance to this and figuring out who we contact as people who want these things to happen with the Department of Agriculture in regards to the produce inspections and things like that. Because some of us are not gonna be in areas where we have the availability to go to a bunch of different people who are making produce, because we are so separated and far out from places that it doesn't make sense for me to have to go 2 hours to get to somebody who's been inspected in order to buy local produce, when I've got somebody right down the road who is doing local produce, but now there's this new produce requirement. And if Wyoming's really the only state that has that, then there has to be some way to spearhead some type of initiative or something to relook at the way that that is done and the way that that is utilized for all of us in these programs and in the school districts, to be able to truly use the people who are local to us.
So maybe I
To do a meeting with the Department of Ag. We had that issue when we took over the slaughterhouse from Roger. They were trying to change a whole bunch of stuff, but it just seemed like they were just trying to pick on us for different things. And I basically warned about the inspector's head and went to the director. And what they did is just have a virtual meeting and everything like that to talk about it. And then, you know, the inspectors really try to shut it down before it happens, but I made it happen.
Right.
And that's kind of like the easiest way to do it is if you put some, first you basically have to talk to the inspector. Then if, you know, if they're not understanding or listening, or you don't say, you got a bunch of people on board with something, because they can really change it, because they are supposed to be equal to or better than that. Even on our retail inspector side. When we do retail customer exempt, that's different. That all we have to do is be there for slot. Make sure we're doing our hand in hand. And they either way, there's records for every single thing.
Right.
And it's all up to them if there's going to be a new record that you have to keep track of all this other stuff. If you do this, what's going to happen with this process? The process broke down to everything that you do and the way that you do. Down to how your records are kept, where it's at, or records go with each one. But that'd probably be the easiest way, because I kind of followed them for like a whole year before. Because they were talking about trying to take away my outside quarter. Well, we process anything from, could be on a slow week, it's 10 beef that we kill in a week, and it can be upward of 16 or 18 beef. Well, fair time, we're doing 34 animals a week, right? Kill and get them processed and all that other stuff. It could be 10 to 14 days, or usually it's actually 12 to 16. But it's just easier to, I think the director, his last name is Wyoming or something.
Yeah, Doug Neva.
Yeah, and he was the one that I sent an email directly to you after I was trying to call his secretary, and they're trying to tell me that, well, you gotta talk to the head of the consumer health, which is the main guy that was causing it. Because he understood the rules, regulations one way, but his inspector saw it the other way. Because he was above them, it had to do what he did, even though multiple inspectors said it's not. And I ended up getting everything figured out, and because like for me, my issue was, my outside holder was, Roger never had an issue with it because so many regulations have changed in the 35 years that we haven't shot. But since we were new, yeah, and so they had an issue. They did take some stuff away, but the outside, they had an issue with moving the carcasses inside to outside and the contamination. Even though you brought it on the table and determined it already. There was never an issue with Roger. And with us, that was a regulation that had to be taken, because we almost wanted us to do something that attached it. But my solution was use those baker bags that they put over their carts. We put over each quarter of a beef as you move it outside and tie it up. That was the easiest solution for that. They didn't want to go that route to find a solution. It's tough to get them to do that when it's the main bag it's covered. It's probably easier if you already got through inspectors and everything beforehand, like, hey, how about they happen this can't be like this? The one that used to be really good at that stuff was Shelley, that's worked for them, but she quit. She quit back. It's been, there's a lot of different stuff that kind of happens when you talk, one inspector has to call other just to make sure that it's something that can be done within the pace. Right. Because there's just
I can tell you that with me on the produce side, I've had two different statements. No, you don't. Yes, you do. And that seems to change.
Right.
And so we have been putting locally grown into schools from multiple producers throughout the state without an inspection. This just came about in January. One's personal opinion of how the rules read is how she interpreted that.
Right.
When another person from her same agency told me the opposite. We never, that I know, have ever had to be inspected.
Yeah.
It's just all new.
Right.
So I wouldn't be, we're gonna succeed. I'm hoping that I get our answer that it's right.
Right.
And that's what I want. But I've had several.
Yeah.
So you have actually a lot of leverage that you might not be aware that you have. So it is very understood that in the state of Wyoming, we don't have as many workers that we could have because we have a lack of care providers to be able to care for children, right? So, and that is known at the business council level and kind of every step in between. And we're happy to say, I'm happy to send off an email to Mr. Miyamoto and say, hey, we just had this farm to school meeting. We had daycares and producers and school districts there. They're concerned about this particular issue of getting farms, having some sort of certification for farms. What can you tell us about this? And is this really a concern? Every one of the businesses in this room are really very much a picture, like a holistic picture, right? Everybody works together. Even if you don't get food or source food from each other, everybody's doing something for the community. And I think sometimes state agencies forget that. They forget how close knit everybody is and how much we actually count on each other just to make it work here. And so we're happy to highlight that. We're supposed to be lobbying. I'm 501c6. I can lobby.
Well, and if I may, we're wrapping up this portion, and I would love for everyone to just think about, what is one thing that based on the conversation here today, you want to commit to doing? What's one little thing that you'd like to put on your, priority to-do list to move closer to doing this? And Bobby, yours is written for you. It's try and get clarity on that licensure and inspection, and maybe change it if you may. But yeah, everyone, if you don't mind just taking a moment to like think about that, and then let's do just a tiny little share around. So just take a moment.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris, for bringing all your knowledge here to the conversation.
Safe travels, everyone.
See ya. All right, anyone want to share what they're planning to do? I think Rebecca kind of shared hers a little bit. Yeah, please. I saw the hand go up there.
I would like to work with my daughter's elementary school and have them come out to our farm.
Nice.
Shortly after school starts, while everything's still green, and see our cows rotationally grazing, high density, short duration grazing, and really understand what that's like.
Nice. Make sure you invite that food service director as well, so they're seeing it alongside everybody, right? Awesome.
Parents too, because we can talk about, the fat profile of our beef and how it's more healthy, and yeah.
Are you pastor? Pastor?
Yeah.
Who else?
I can go. So I run the AmeriCorps Vista program for PEP, and I did talk briefly to Savannah, who's at our Powell School District, about placing a Vista with them to work on that side. And because of the time frame and holidays, you have a million excuses, but yeah, I'm going to pursue that more. And we have our superintendent who's on our PEP board, who I've also talked to about being a Vista host site, and I think a Vista for the school district would be really helpful here. So
Nice. How about one more? Any ideas?
I want to really figure out locally somewhere to procure produce for our program, because even going to our grocery store is very limited in what's actually sold there and what you can actually get. And so having a variety or having different things that we can give to the kids is limited, even shopping at the grocery store, or like I am a part of CNC co-op. And so I have the availability to use Cisco, but again, it's one of those things that quantity issues of ordering stuff and then trying to have storage for it. I only place a Cisco order once every 6 weeks right now at this point, by the time I have enough space to then again order more stuff, because they bring us a whole case of bread and that takes up half of my deep freezer. And so we have to wait till we've gone through all of that in order to order stuff, and ordering more fresh. I've been buying a lot of fresh fruits that can then be frozen, so that way we get them and then we're able to cut up all the strawberries, lay them out on cookie sheets, flash freeze them, and then put them into bags. The same thing with bananas, where you freeze the bananas, and the kids think that those are just like these. It's the most amazing thing to get a frozen banana slice or a frozen strawberry slice. They just think it's a super cool thing, but then we're able to have those different things throughout not growing season and not trying to get those things and serve to the kids. And I'd rather use my freezer space for stuff like that than cases of bread that take forever to go through.
So finding that local producer to connect with. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old, and it is truly incredible the difference when something is frozen versus not. I am totally with you on that. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for all your time. You get a break here now before, you're really in for a treat with the panel that you're going to have there. But just thank you to the Powell team for having Bobby and I. It was such a pleasure to be a part of the conversation, and neither of us are going away. We're here to continue the conversation, answer questions, or chat with you. Bobby is going to stay there in person. I unfortunately have to go, but we have you can get our contact information, and just don't hesitate to reach out. But thank you for all that you do, and thanks for your time here today.
Okay, so we're just gonna take a 15-minute break or so, 10-minute break, and then we'll have our panel discussion that's gonna be moderated by Alex.
Chief is the Wyoming Department of Education nutritionist and former food service director from Park County School District number 6. Bobby Lane here is the Wyoming Department of Education Farm to School coordinator. Our 2 new speakers now, Jose Garcia from Rogers Meat Processing in Powell, and Savannah Leyland from Park County School District number 1, our food service coordinator director here. Thank you guys for joining. I'm Alex Field. I'm really personally passionate about maintaining the economic viability of our working farms and ranches. That's why I have the job as the director of Park County Open Lands to protect and steward our working farms and ranches for current and future generations. And that's why in 2022, I told my husband there are 5 cows coming to the farm and we're going to start selling beef directly to consumers. And here we are today and planning for beef sales in 2025 and hoping to have, 40 or so beef to sell. So I'm excited about this opportunity to work with the schools and excited to learn more from you all. Again, you'll hear a lot of my questions unless you send me. So let's just start. I think one of the things we heard today is that this is a long-term strategy that we as a community need to take to build together. Right? If we can start small, we can grow to something really big. And we will see lots of challenges as we are starting. But if we can find those entry points for conversations to build relationships, we'll get to a vision where the school system can be supporting local agriculture, and local agriculture can be providing healthy schools for healthy children, healthy meals for healthy children. With that in mind, I would love to hear from you guys how you see opportunities for those entry points, right? From each of you, from your different perspectives. So why don't you introduce yourselves, those of you who we haven't heard from already, and then answer that question, how you're already engaging in the farm to school program and what entry points you see. And if you've already talked a lot, what entry points do you see in this community?
Do you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who I am. I'm Bobby Lane, farm school coordinator for the state of Wyoming Department of Education. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I have over 35 years in the ag industry. This by far has been the most exciting trip I've ever made, as far as working with people. And I started with working for the state engineer's office in water law. So I got to be involved in irrigation water and administration of that for almost 12 years. And then I went to the Department of Corrections, where I was the ag supervisor and educated inmates on how to grow gardens. Then we ended up have such a huge success of growing gardens. We started donating to the First Lady and the Wyoming Hunger Initiative. And I still work with the First Lady and those programs. Now I work with her on the beef side of things, where we're getting beef donated at every county fair
for the Backpack Friday program, beef sticks for the Backpack Friday. In fact, I just delivered a whole truckload of those beef sticks in Fremont County. So I've got a pretty extensive background in the ag world and being involved with food, lots of food, water and food. Where I see this growing, we've only seen a small growth. It's going to continue to get bigger. You know, I concentrated, and no offense, for my childcare centers, I concentrated on the schools first. Now I'm going after the childcare centers as well, and still visiting the schools, which I'll probably see you at one of the trainings here upcoming pretty soon if you're going to go to the CACFB trainings.
March 10th.
Yeah, I'll be there. So the opportunities for the producers and for the schools are just really getting started, and those relationships are really just getting going. And watching them continue to grow and develop is what I'm plan on continuing that as their counselor. You know, I'm the matchmaker. They make their own decisions, but I recommend, but I just keep those relationships going. And I'm looking forward to keeping that all going, and a lot of excitement. I've seen it, you know, working with the food service directors this year, watching them all come together as a team. Savannah was part of that. Chris was part of that. And they all just like, okay, we're going to do this. And we did. And we got rewarded. I mean, we did well. And it's just going to continue to grow. That's my vision. Next. I'm Jose Garcia. Everybody usually knows me as Junior. It's because my dad's Jose too. Little bit about me and I guess us is that my dad worked for Roger for 27 years before we took it over. And then, so we took it over June 1st of 19. And I've been working there on and off since I was a freshman in high school until then I went to college and everything for business and finished with bachelor's in business at UW. But a lot of the stuff we actually produced a lot more than Roger did, according to at least our inspectors from what they've told us. Because I think last year we were #1 for Wyoming on. So on how we do it is custom retail exempt. So by the way that we actually process, we were #1 in Wyoming for production. And that's saying we do anywhere from as low as 10 beef a week to 16, and depends on the size of them too. Depends on, because each farmer there, you kind of get to know the farmers based off the size of the beef. You know, you can tell you're about roughly the average of most farmers' beef of what they weigh on the rail. So that's how we kind of based on it on what we're bringing in for the week and everything. And since we took him over, I think we've done more every single year, especially the first 2 years. We definitely doubled those pretty quick. Now, a lot of the pricing has changed too since then. COVID treated us really well because more people were buying local. So more people were trying to understand and getting that taste in their mouth and realizing that's something that they wanted to keep coming back to. And what helps us is when farmers want to trade. So like if I need a burger cow, but they don't need all the burger from their burger cow, we'll trade, or, you know, half and half or whatever it is. And that way